In this presentation, we're going to go over the applied dissertation for both the Doctor of Education and the Doctor of Business Administration programs. They follow a similar format in the sense that they are applied, and I'll talk a little bit about what applied means later on in this presentation and then also in the next presentation. But this is really just a high-level overview of what the dissertation process is. To begin with, the dissertation is a major research study, and you'll read many studies along your path through your doctoral program, but this one is a major research study that is something that has not been done before, so it's unique. And it's unique in the sense that we really want you to explore an area of research in your field that would be something interesting to others that nobody has ever looked at before. To that end, you'll also be advancing your field in a unique way, meaning that you're doing work that nobody else has done, but it's also important in the sense that it's going to actually advance and highlight information about your field that nobody's ever uncovered before. Your dissertation should be limited in scope. Don't try to take on the whole world, because that's how a doctoral student never finishes. So we'll talk a little bit about limiting the problem statement and limiting the scope of your dissertation, but it doesn't have to be the greatest thing in the world or the largest thing in the world. It just has to be done. And think about your project as you learn through your coursework. It's going to be important for you to keep your mind sort of on kind of the topic of your presentation or the topic of your dissertation and what you want that to be, because you can actually craft some of your assignments to fit or to contribute to your overall dissertation. And lastly, my advice is to choose wisely. This is a topic you're going to be working with for quite some time. And you don't want to choose one that you're not really passionate about, and you don't want to choose one that you're going to get tired of somewhere along the line. There are a number of people that are there to help you get through your dissertation process. The most important one is your chair. Along the way, you will be assigned a chair, and your chair's job is to work with you as you create your proposal, conduct your study, and then produce your results. So your chair is your primary contact member, and you probably will only have contact with your chair. It's a very important relationship. But along the line, you'll also have some committee members, and these are people who are members of your dissertation committee, and their job is to, once you and the chair have approved or finished a portion of the dissertation, their job is to review it and make sure that there's no other problems or challenges or anything that needs to be dealt with. They basically serve as a second set of eyes, so that we can say that there was an entire committee of people who approved your dissertation. There's a couple other processes along the way. The Institutional Review Board is the board that looks at your dissertation to make sure that there are no ethical issues in the design of the research. And that's really not going to be an issue for many of you, although it could be an issue if you're dealing with protected populations or if you're dealing with human subjects. You'll need to get informed consent. We can talk more about that later on in the process. There's also a review by what's currently co-dissertation, one of two people who serve as a dissertation director, and one of those two will review your project as it gets close to being finished to ensure that it's solid and everything is ready to go. There's a final review that's done by either the School of Applied Leadership Dean or, in the case of the Doctor of Business Administration, the program lead will do that final review, and that's to make sure that that dissertation is fitting all of the requirements. There are two things that happen at the end. There's a defense of the dissertation, which is where the student will present his or her research, his or her results, and be able to talk about what they found. And then there's also dissemination. Both programs are unique in the sense that we require you to disseminate your results out to the public. We want the dissertation to be kind of the beginning point of your research career. And since you've gone to the trouble of conducting a major study and completing a research project like this, we want you to be able to either publish it in a journal or present it at a conference. There are 3 stages of the dissertation. The first one is the prospectus, and the prospectus has recently changed. Instead of actually writing a document, we are now using what's called the doctoral prospectus tool. And in the next presentation, we're going to go over that in detail, and I'll show you exactly how that works and exactly how that's used. But that will serve as your prospectus, which is basically a high-level sort of introduction of your topic, your problem statement, and what you intend to do. Once your prospectus is approved by your chair and your committee members, then you move on to the proposal. The proposal is the full length of chapters 1, 2, and 3 of your dissertation, and it's a proposed project in the sense that you are proposing what you will do. So you write in the future tense, I will be doing the study, this will be my methodology, those kinds of things. that must be approved by your chair, your committee members, your co-dissertation director, and the institutional review board before you're allowed to gather one bit of data. Once that is approved, you can go ahead and gather your data, conduct your research, and then you'll produce your final dissertation report. That's the final product that you will actually defend and then disseminate at the end of your process. The dissertation format that we use actually follows a fairly standard format for research projects. In Chapter 1, you will complete your introduction, and that is where you'll introduce your topic, your problem statement, your research questions, and the purpose of your study. In Chapter 2, you will present the literature that is related to your topic. And the whole point of presenting the literature is that since we want you to advance your field, you must be able to present the current state of your field so that we understand how your work has a significant impact on that field. So your literature review is a substantial review of the literature that is related to the topic you've chosen. In Chapter 3, you'll present your methodology, and this is basically down to the very detailed level, a description of the method you will use to conduct your study. The methodology chapter should contain so much detail that I should be able to conduct your study exactly the same way you conducted your study, because you've described your methods down to that level. Once you conduct your study, you will present your findings in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is just that. It's just the findings. What did I find? And then when you get to Chapter 5, you can talk about the significance of your analysis of your findings. A little more detail now on each of the 3 steps in the dissertation process. The first is the prospectus. And the goal of the prospectus is really to tell your chair and your committee members what your initial idea is. But it's not just your initial idea. It is, what is your problem statement? How will you research that problem statement? How do you know that that problem statement is really a problem that is worth researching? What are your research questions? What is the purpose of your study? Those kinds of things. There's a couple things that need to be thought about in the prospectus. Your problem, first and foremost, which we'll talk about in the next presentation, must be supported by literature. It has to be a real problem. It can't be your opinion, and it cannot be something that you just think is a problem. It also has to have a link to either leadership if you're in the Doctor of Education program, or to business if you're in the Doctor of Business Administration program. You have to tie that link in because you are in fact advancing your field in those areas. And lastly, your prospectus will be reviewed by your chair and by the committee and also by the co-directors, just to ensure that you're on track and that everything stays on track. A bit more now about the proposal. The proposal is to be completed after the prospectus has been approved. Do not start working on your proposal before your prospectus is approved. I've seen students do that way too many times, and then they have to go back and change not only their prospectus, but they have to rewrite their proposal. The proposal is the full version of chapters 1, 2, and 3. That's your introduction, your literature review, and your methods section. The only difference is that the methods section is written in future tense. You put all of the detail there. It's a full version of it, and it's to be reviewed. Once you've done that, it's to be reviewed by your chair, your committee members, your co-dissertation director, and it will also go to the institutional review board for ethical review. The proposal is probably the biggest mountain that you'll climb in your dissertation process. The prospectus will help if the prospectus is done well, because the proposal is just basically an expansion of what you've contained in your prospectus. But the proposal really does have that level of detail where you've really looked at what is the problem. You've really looked at what are the questions I want to look at. You've done a full review of the literature, and you've included all of the detail about your methodology section. So the proposal is a big portion of it, and I often say to doctoral students that once you get past the proposal and you get approval from your chair, your committee members, and IRB, the rest of it is all downhill from there. And lastly, after you get your proposal approved and you start gathering your data, once you complete the gathering of your data, you will be able to generate the final report. And remember that chapters 4 and 5 are where you present your findings and then present your analysis of those findings. It is important to note that you are not allowed to gather any data until you receive IRB approval. Any student who begins gathering data before IRB approval will be required to throw away that data and start over. So don't gather data before IRB approval. Once you produce chapters 4 and 5, your full dissertation will be reviewed by your chair and your committee members, and then it will also be reviewed by either your program lead or your program dean. And that is kind of a final check just to make sure that everything checks out okay. But it's important that you get everything right with your chair and committee members, because the dean or the program lead has the right to kick it back if he or she believes it's not right. Once the dissertation is accepted by the program lead or dean, then your defense will be scheduled and you'll have an opportunity to defend your research. That's basically just explaining what you did, why you did it, what your rationale was, and what your findings mean. Then you will be able to, and you can actually do the dissemination before or after, but once your results are available, you should consider how you want to disseminate those results, whether you want to write up your dissertation in a journal article and submit it to a journal, or you want to present it at a conference. We do not expect you to get approval for the first journal that you submit or the first conference that you submit to. We only want to know that you have a product, whether it be an article or a presentation, that you can submit to a journal or submit to a conference. If it doesn't get accepted the first time, you still have that product to resubmit to a second time. In your program, there are a number of courses that are either there for your dissertation process or for your research courses that you'll use in your dissertation process. RESR 694A through E are the courses that you will enroll in as you are completing parts of your dissertation, whether it be the prospectus, the proposal, or the final dissertation product. RESR F is the final dissertation class, and you will not be allowed to enroll in that course until you are ready to defend and disseminate your results. RESR 699 is a continuing research course that can be utilized if you run out of RESR 694 courses. If you get to RESR 694E, complete it, and you're not ready for F, you will enroll in RESR 699 until you're ready for F. The research courses that are built into the programs are RESR 6, 17, 19, 21, 23, and 25. 617 is an introduction to research. 19 and 21 are your qualitative and quantitative research courses, and 623 and 25 are your more advanced research courses, showing you how to complete parts of your dissertation. These are all designed to help facilitate the dissertation process. And I encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to explore and test out different ideas in your research courses. So if you're coming up with an idea for your dissertation and you want to utilize that idea for some of the assignments that are contained in the research courses, by all means do that. And one thing also to keep in mind, because I've had students ask me this, the dissertation is a place where we allow you to reuse the work that you've created throughout your program. It is a project that you're doing, it is a project that you're writing, and if you have written something in one of your assignments or several things in all of your assignments that you want to then pull in, specifically in the literature review part of your dissertation, it's by all means allowed to do that. It's the one place where we allow you to utilize work you've used before. This is a good time to begin the conversation about the nature of the types of dissertations that we do at City University in both of the doctoral programs. And we do what's called applied research. Applied research meaning that we want you to research a problem and come up with a potential intervention or a potential solution and apply that solution or something that can be applied to the original problem as a potential solution for that problem. This is as opposed to basic research. A lot of PhD programs do basic research where they just simply put a question out there and they ask a question: what is the relationship of variable A to variable B? And that's interesting, and it furthers the field, and it's knowledge that can be used by somebody else, but it's not applied. It's not applied in the strict sense of what we are asking you to do. What we're asking you to do is to generate new knowledge and apply that new knowledge in pursuit of a solution to the problem that you've identified in your field. A key part of the applied research process is the problem statement. And the problem statement is really what problem in your field you've decided to dedicate your energies to. And it's going to be a very limited problem. It's limited in scope. We don't want to say something like, the problem is that business returns have declined in the last 10 years. Well, that's way too large. It's way too big. Business returns where? Business returns for who? Business returns in what industry or what field? So we want something that is very succinct, very direct, and it could be something that is very very focused and crystallized. We want it to be something that represents a real problem in your field. It is not your opinion. It is not a problem that you think exists, but it should be having a negative impact on some area of your field, and its resolution will be of some value to those in your field. It also has to be supported by the literature. You have to be able to cite literature that shows that this, in fact, is a real problem in the field. And as I indicated before, it's clear, it's succinct, and it's limited in scope. In the next presentation, we'll talk a lot more about the problem statement, but what I want to finish this presentation out with is basically a review of expectations. And I think it's important for us to go into the dissertation process with a clear understanding of what the expectations are of both the chair and the student. First things first, you will spend a lot of time on this dissertation, and so I encourage you to find a way to be able to sort of allocate time, allocate your energy, allocate resources, whatever, and plan this out. And say to yourself, I'm going to put 5 hours a week into this, or I'm going to make progress every day, or I'm going to do something every X number of days. Just know that this is going to take you a long time and be able to plan out accordingly. Your interactions with your chair are key, and it's going to be important that you understand what your chair will do and will not do. Your chair is there to guide you and help you and give you an idea about sort of the direction that you're going and how best it can be presented. But your chair is not writing your dissertation for you. That's your job. Your job is to write things and submit them to the chair and then have the chair provide feedback on that. Your chair is also not your editor, and I encourage chairs that if they receive documents from students that are full of typos or full of wording problems, to kick them back until they're clean, because the chair should not have to be the editor to clean everything up for the student. It is important that you make the edits and deal with the edits that are recommended by your chair, your committee members, or your co-dissertation directors. Do not ignore them, because we will remember that we made them and we will make you make them again. Keep in mind that this is a scholarly document. It's a scholarly document in the sense that the only thing that should be in your document is what you've been able to find in the literature and what you've been able to find in your research. I will often find things in dissertations that are really student opinion. And students can be really sneaky about sneaking that in, and I will kick it back every time. I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care what you think. I don't care about the adjectives you're going to use to help sort of sway the writing that you're putting into your dissertation. We, of course, use the APA 6th edition manual, and that is how you will format your document. And again, you want to make sure that your work is original. It's original work. It is unique work. It is research that you're conducting in your field, something that nobody else has ever done. So in order to help you out, I'm going to share with you some challenges that I have run into in my many, many years of chairing dissertation committees and also dissertation processes. And it's not necessarily that I expect that any of these problems will be ones that you encounter, but if I tell you about them now, they can be ones that you avoid. One of the biggest challenges that we'll see with doctoral students is just the writing, and that's where you can work with your chair, and your chair can help you get the writing, not the editing, but the actual writing to be where you want it to be. We follow APA, we have to use good writing quality, it has to be clear, and there has to be a reasonable, effective method of organizing your thoughts. The second challenge that I have seen frequently in applied research that is based on a problem statement has to do with the problem statement itself. And if we don't get this right, the whole research, the whole dissertation will be challenged. Some of the challenges that we see with the problem statement is, one, it's not a problem. It's in fact a research question. So saying something to the effect of, my lack of knowledge about XYZ is my problem, that's not really working. That's not really a problem. So it's got to be a problem. It's got to be something that is a documented problem in your field. Also, it's gigantic. It's too large in scope, and so we'll work with you, your chairs will work with you to narrow that down, because almost everybody comes into this with a problem statement that is far too broad in scope. So your chair will work with you to get that down to a reasonable size. Sometimes people come up with problem statements that's not something that anybody really cares about, in the sense that it's not something that is having really an impact on people in the field. So it's again, we want something that is actually impacting people in the field, something that if it is resolved, there will be people that benefit. We've also run into problems where the problem statement is something that's already been done. It's already been done, and the only thing that the student is doing is just solving the problem in a different location. That doesn't really work, because one location is really not that much different than the other. So we want to make sure that your work is unique. And then a last one, a subtle one that we've seen, is that students think that by gathering or reviewing information that's already been gathered, by basically opening a filing drawer and pulling out some folders and reviewing some information that's already been gathered, that's dissertation worthy. And that's not really dissertation worthy. You're not creating new knowledge. You're looking at existing knowledge and using it for your dissertation. So your chair will keep you away from those problems as well. So biggest challenge is that students just can't seem to get their minds around the concepts of addressing a problem. And again, work with your chair and spend time to get this right. The other challenge that we see, and I've already talked about this, the students sometimes think that their chair is their editor. That is not the case. And again, I will encourage chairs to kick back documents that are not clean. Some more challenges that I have seen with doctoral students is that they can sometimes get their minds on a topic that just doesn't work, but they won't let it go. For example, it's not a problem, it's a question, or it's not something that really matters all that much. It's not going to benefit people. The resolution of the problem won't benefit people in the field. It's not going to advance the field, but the student came into the process with that topic in mind and wants to stick with that topic. I would encourage you to work with your chair to see if you can identify a problem that is related to that topic. In most cases you probably can, keeping in mind that lack of knowledge is not an acceptable problem, but you may also have to be faced with the fact that you can't research what you originally wanted to research because it isn't an appropriate topic. I already talked about making sure that you pick something that is dissertation worthy, and when we talk about dissertation worthiness, we're really talking about something that advances the field in a meaningful and useful way. Sometimes a student can get so overwhelmed by the whole giant project that they can't find a place to start, and this is where you pull in your resources, your chair, your faculty, and then I encourage you also just break it down, break the mountain down to small little hills and take one hill at a time. A big challenge that we see sometimes with students is they fail to deal with the edits that their chair has sent them. Don't do this. This is a waste of everybody's time. If your chair has sent you something that he or she believes needs to be edited, cleaned up, fixed, whatever, go ahead and follow that. If you have questions about it, ask your chair. If you disagree with the edits, talk to your chair. Don't just ignore them. And we've also, believe it or not, run into problems where we've actually had students who either tried to get the chair to write part of their dissertation for them or to look up literature for them. A frequent request that we get is, I can't find literature on XYZ. Can you help me out? Can you find some literature for me? No, we're not going to do that. This is your project, not ours. And a few more challenges that we see with doctoral students is sometimes there can be unrealistic expectations about when they think they're going to finish. Frequently we'll run into the issue with students that take a really long time to finish, but we also sometimes run into students who think that they're going to finish a dissertation in 6 months. It's just not going to happen. If it is going to happen, it's probably going to be something that is very unique, very rare, or probably not very good quality. So just expect to take a good amount of time on this. I think the fastest dissertations I've heard of are completed in about a year, and some of them can take many years. But don't expect to get it done in 3 to 6 months. It's just not realistic. Sometimes we've run into problems where the student has requested a chair because it's easier to get a new chair than to make all of the changes that the chair has asked you to, that first chair has asked you to make. We won't do that. We won't actually replace a chair unless there's a real good cause for it. And sometimes there is. Sometimes it's just not a good match. So it needs to be dealt with. But we're not going to do it just because a student doesn't want to make the edits that the chair has asked for. Frequently we see students who don't necessarily try to cut corners on APA, but just don't realize the right way to do APA. And so that will get kicked back. It'll get kicked back hopefully by your chair, if not by your committee members, so that you get your APA right. And then there's always the issue of plagiarism. Now plagiarism comes in two forms. It comes in sort of an unintentional form where you don't credit something correctly or don't credit a source correctly. And we'll try to catch all of those and get those fixed. The other kind of plagiarism is intentional plagiarism, where the student tries to take work that is written by somebody else and pass it off as his or her own. That is pretty much a deal breaker, and if you commit intentional plagiarism in your dissertation, you very likely will face removal from your program. So that's a lot of challenges, and it seems like this is going to be a very daunting process, but it is definitely doable, and it's something that you can get through. And we want you to be able to have a good, effective learning process. And we don't want your dissertation process to leave you like this. Many students talk about how hard the process was, how difficult it was to get through, how difficult it was to finish, but the one thing that they all can agree on is that it was a great feeling when it was all done. So hopefully this is not your experience. Dissertations can be difficult, but keep in mind that you are not alone. You have many people that are there to help you and many people that are there to guide you through the process. Again, first and foremost is your chair. Your chair is there to help you through this process, and you will establish a strong working relationship with your chair as he or she gets you through the process. But you also have your program faculty. Those who are experts in a particular field may be related to the one you're doing your dissertation on. There's also, for the EDD students, there's a doctoral student administrator who is an individual who is specifically dedicated to supporting those Doctor of Education students. There's also librarians, and then I would recommend that you find subject matter experts or others in your field who can provide you with a level of expertise to let you know kind of where you want to take your project or the significance of your work. We will cover a lot more of this information in future presentations and also in future residencies. This residency is really focused on the problem statement and getting you off to a good start. The later residencies will be focused on things like the literature review and the methodology section. But right now, in this residency, we'll focus primarily on the problem statement. And you'll get a chance to practice later today or later in this residency, where you'll actually get a chance to write a problem statement and get some feedback on it from others. If you have more questions on the material in this presentation or anything about the dissertation process, again, I'll direct you first to your chair. If you don't have a chair yet, then you'll get one soon and you'll be able to talk with that person about your research process. Also talk with your faculty. For those of you who don't yet have a chair, you may be too early in your program to have a chair, but you can talk to your faculty and those who have actually taught your classes, who have some expertise, some level of expertise in this field, and get some ideas on where your problem, which problem statement you might want to choose. For Doctor of Education students, you guys have an assigned dissertation student advisor, and that's Dr. Presley Rankin, and I've put his email address here. So this concludes this presentation on just the general overview of the dissertation process. Hopefully it was useful. If you have any questions, you can ask them, if you're online, you can ask them via online sources, or you can hopefully get those questions answered in the next presentation, where we'll go into a lot more detail about the prospectus and how that's done.